Quatre debate, we're asking why there was unprecedented violence in Egypt, unprecedented since the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak back in February. Coptic Christian demonstrators alongside moderate Muslims who were attacked, shot at, and run over even by army vehicles. With us to talk about it, Shahir Rigaud, member of Solidarity Copts here in France. From Cairo, Dina Zakaria, co-founder of the Freedom and Justice Party, is with us. Ihab Youssef of risk assessment group Risk Free Egypt. And from Washington, he teaches at National Defense University. Walid Fares is joining us here for part two. We heard just before the break the theories on who's responsible for this bloodbath. The Prime Minister of Egypt discussing perhaps what he sees as a foreign hand when he addressed the nation.
Instead of advancing to build a modern state of democratic principles, we're back searching for security and stability, worrying that there are hidden hands, both domestic and foreign, seeking to obstruct the will of Egyptians in establishing a democracy.
Foreign hands. Walid Fares, what do you think he's referring to?
Well, this reminds me and reminds all of us how when the Mubarak regime was around and there were the demonstrations, what did the Mubarak spokesperson said? Do you remember? Foreign hands. It's always foreign hands. That's where we go when we don't want to be clear, when we want to be abstract. If these were foreign hands, 100,000 Coptic demonstrators, and then incidents across Egypt for the last 9 months, I mean, that would be a pretty foreign hand. Reality is that the government of Egypt, which is now preparing for elections, which should happen, should be responsible in determining who is attacking this one specific community, who gave the orders to the army to engage with their vehicles against them, and who was sniping from the sides, and who is doing the bombing. If all of these were foreign hands, you know, that is not a clear answer. I feel that the government is concerned and is afraid to identify the attackers, because that would engage this government in much bigger clashes with people who have weapons. I mean, the Copts do not have weapons. They may have sticks, but they are not an organized force. So the government is trying to say there are no incidents in Egypt. This is a foreign hand. The Copts should, cool off, and then let's go towards the election, and maybe we can have a solution in the future. My fear is that elections may happen, but the incidents may not be discontinued. It may continue. So it has to be addressed now.
Shahir Rigaud, again, the military council has promised a full inquiry. Are you hopeful?
No. This time, to be honest, I'm not really optimistic. If you would like me to give just one example, some information that reached my association, Coptic Solidarity in France today, not really confirmed, but is almost sure that the governor of Aswan, who apparently has been responsible of what happened to this church, wanted to displace the problem and could be responsible for having sent huge numbers of thugs to Cairo and to turn just to avert the attention of people.
That's a serious accusation.
It's very serious. So this is why I'm citing my sources. It's information that our association, Coptic Solidarity, received today. And just to, I'm not confirming it. It's not. I'm not the source. But this governor of Aswan is one of the rare people as governors from the clan or the clan of Mubarak, who is still in power as a governor. And he is extremely protected by the military.
Ihab Youssef, how do you explain what happened?
I see that the people was eager for a lot of stability after the revolution, but their expectations were very high. Everybody was expecting everything to happen in one day. But the government was not able, and the High Military Council was not able to accommodate the people, and that's why we found a lot of struggling between the people and their expectations. And at the same time, there are real things that need to be taken into consideration and need to be actioned quickly, like what happened in the church in Aswan. I think if the people there felt that the governor is capable and he did what he has to do in a proper manner and a quick response, and the government was able to handle their requirements and to address the problem clearly and to take actions in according to what they need. If it's according to the law, then everything was going to be in place. But because nothing is happening quickly and no transparency, to the extent that the people went into the street last Tuesday and they demonstrated, and now they went back yesterday night and the clashes happened, I believe that things need to be taken more seriously. Strategic plans should be done. It's not about emergency law and anti-demonstration laws that have been announced recently, because we can tell now in reality that they are not applicable. They're not providing what we need from security measures. So we need to sit up and talk in a different way and a different tone, and everything should be addressed in a proper way, because a lot of violence, a lot of actions that have been happening since the revolution till now will happen in Sinai and exploring the pipeline, the gas pipeline, and what's happening now with the Coptics. We can't hang all of this on visual hands or the former regime, though there might be some things that are happening from them, but we have to be proactive and we have to take the real measures that should set everything in place. This will never come without justice, transparency, and proper strategic planning.
All right, I need to sit down. Egyptian presidential hopeful Amr Moussa squarely blames the army, the former head of the Arab League, among several opposition leaders speaking out this Monday.
Yesterday, it was probably not a clash between Muslims and Christians, but it was led by thugs who wanted to stab the revolution and the political process. We must be careful so that things do not get out of control. The situation is critical and there are threats of civil war. We hope we won't reach this point.
The barrier fell yesterday. The check that was given to the armed forces and the Supreme Council from Tahrir Square has ended yesterday.
The threat of civil war we heard there, Dina Zakaria. Do you agree that with what Ayman Noor just said there, that trust with the army has been broken by the events of the past 24 hours?
Let me talk first about civil war. First of all, from the very beginning, the relationship between Copts and Muslims in Egypt was very clear. No problems. We can live together. We are all Egyptians, so we are not afraid about any confrontation between Muslims and Christians future. But to talk about Ayman Noor's statement, let me tell you something. We are opposing the management of the military force now to several problems. And the main reason for that is because they are, in a way, make the transitional period getting longer. And that's what we really said before. We were initiative to mention that the transitional period should be so short because...
All right. Apologies for that. We seem to have lost the connection there with Dina Zakaria. Hopefully it'll be reinstated in a moment. Dina Zakaria, are you there?
Yes, I'm with you. I can hear you.
Okay, because we had a break in the connection there. You were saying how the military might be dragging its heels. All right, we're going to try to fix that connection for you. By the way, here's what the Guardian's Cairo correspondent writes in a column on the newspaper's website this Monday. Although it is the Salafist mobs reportedly trying to break down hospital doors to get at wounded Christian demonstrators that present the most obvious figures of blame, it is Egypt's broader political elite, and particularly its increasingly brazen junta, that shoulder the biggest responsibility for Sunday's events. Those the words there of the Guardian's Cairo correspondent. Walid Fares, the junta trying to drag its heels. You agree with Dina Zakaria?
Well, look, there is another myth going on here, which is relationship between Christians and Muslims. Well, the issue is not about Christians and Muslims in Egypt. We saw it in January and February, that those who took to the streets were Muslims and Christians. It's an ideological faction within Egypt and the military regimes who are behind those problems and have to be questioned. The Copts are not saying we are attacked by the Muslims. The Copts are saying that there are extremists attacking our churches. And they are saying that the military regime or junta or council, one, is not doing enough to protect us. And when we wanted to express ourselves and go to Tahrir Square or any other street, they actually crushed us. So the first issue here, the test for the military is simple. If you, military, have brought down Mubarak because of 1 million people in Tahrir Square, when 100,000 Copts take to the streets, why do you crush them? Let them demonstrate. That would be the test that you are basically going to be balanced. And this is what I think the international community, including the United States and the European Parliament, are going to be asking the Military Council.
And how do you explain it?
I think that inside the Military Council, they have two fears or two concerns. One is the next elections are going to form a government. They are unsure if that government is going to maintain their privileges or not. That's a very clear issue. In order to maintain those privileges, they have to cut deals with the political forces they feel are coming to power. So one of the deals in those privileges is not to go against those extremists when they attack the Copts because of ideological reasons. That's the only reason I can see. Why is it that the powerful military of Egypt is not going and shutting down the Salafi terrorist or extremist operation? Everybody in Egypt, or the consensus in Egypt, is against those extremists, both Christians and Muslims. There must be a reason behind that.
Dina Zakaria, is your Freedom and Justice Party, to a certain degree, being outflanked by a more radical element?
Sorry?
Is your Freedom and Justice Party being outflanked by more radical Salafists?
No, I can't hear.
All right, we seem to have a sound problem. We'll try to get back. Apologies for the technical problems there. I'll put that question to you, Ihab Youssef. Your thoughts?
If you don't mind, can you repeat the question, please?
Do you feel as though the Muslim Brotherhood and its Freedom and Justice Party are being outflanked by a more radical element, by the Salafists who've to a certain degree perhaps infiltrated part of the army?
So you mean they escalate the problem?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. No, I believe it's not directly this way, because we heard yesterday from the Parliament, from the Muslim Brotherhood Party and from the Salafist Party that they asked the people to go back to their homes. But we can't ignore the level of education in the Egyptian society. We have more than 40% of non-educated people, and this gives them a motto of movement under the religion umbrella without thinking of or noticing what's happening. So when it triggers to be clashes between Muslims and Christians, you'll find everyone is going into his direction, which is the worst that can happen to Egypt. And this was the one of the things that happened yesterday, that we noticed that some of the Muslims went into the Tahrir Square, which is not very far from where the clashes happened yesterday, and they were collecting themselves as Muslims against Christians, this is the worst that can ever happen to Egypt. And thanks God that the High Military Council enforced time measures, and everybody was pushed to go home yesterday. And I think that we need to educate people more that it's not about religion, it's about how we can make our country safer.
Shahir, we go. Let me get your reaction to that.
I don't totally agree with Mr.
Youssef.
Yes. He is right. There is a great number of illiterate people, unfortunately. It could reach 40%, perhaps more. But I think the country is really suffering, not from its ignorant people, but from the people who are in power. We had a very totalitarian dictatorship before with Mubarak, but now since the military took power, it's getting worse.
It's
getting worse.
Ihab Youssef, it wasn't illiterate people, it was armed vehicles that are going after those demonstrators in those images we have.
I can't see the pictures because I'm so sorry I'm not on the TV. But if you're talking about the armed vehicles or a normal vehicle.
The armored vehicles from Sunday evening, those are army vehicles that are going after demonstrators. These aren't poor illiterate people.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry. I understood the question first time is about the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis. Now he's asking about the military and its role and what happened on Tuesday. Am I
Well,
right?
because you were saying is that the intolerance level is, you're saying the intolerance level rose in part because there's a certain portion of the population that's illiterate.
What I want to say is, if the friction started to be between Muslims and Christians, this would be damaging for the Egyptian society. If what we need to set up is a proper circumstances and action plan from the government and from the High Military Council to favor the people, to understand what they need and to start taking action on. What happened yesterday from both sides was totally mistaken, because the Copts going there into this area and demonstrating with this huge number, it wasn't going to deliver a proper message. Though they have their own channels that they communicate their problems from, and at the same time being attacked and faced by force from the army or from the police, this is also a dramatic end, which is not going to be acceptable. So what we need to put is a strategic plan on how to implement the law and enforce the law over everybody. So everybody should expect and respect the law and should be dealt through. If anybody has a complaint, I think that there should be a normal process.
All right, a need to rethink security. We're almost out of time. Walid Fares, I know you penned an article where you were very critical of the Obama administration, saying it's settled for an Egypt share between the military and the Islamists. Are Sunday's tragic events a wake-up call?
Well, of course they are, and not just for the Copts. What we see now, we saw are incidents where the Copts were suppressed. I'm concerned for the majority of Muslims who are moderates who, in the future, may also find themselves in a similar situation.
Has Washington heard that wake-up call?
I think there is going to be a big debate. Today is a holiday in Washington, but I think that this week between Congress and the administration is going to be a lot of talking. Remember, the United States provides billions of dollars in support, not just to Egypt in general, but to the armed forces. And the pictures that the American citizens have seen over the weekend are not really positive.
All right, Walid Fares, I want to thank you for joining us from Washington. I want to thank Ihab Yusuf for joining us from Port Said. From Cairo, Dina Zakaria, apologies for the technical problems we had with the link there with Cairo. And Shahir Arigo, thank you for being with us here in the studio. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business. That's hosted by Marcus Carlson.